Hey everybody, welcome back to MTRA Bedtime Stories. Tonight we are headed into Chapter 8 of Stay the Distance. Are you ready? Let's see what's happening. Bronzy is a classically plain bay. She's gangly, but she'll be a big mare when she's older and is already big now. The only thing dainty about her is the tiny white star on her forehead because the rest is impressively large. We want to go easy with her, Dad tells George. She'll want to go straight to the lead, so let her pull you out there. We're in the saddling paddock at Saratoga and it's opening day. Bronzy will run in her first race, a maiden for 2-year-old fillies, those who are all first-timers or have never won. The track is crawling with people. Families picnic in the shade of the trees, sprawled out in lawn chairs like they're at a particularly formal day at the beach. Gamblers rove between the saddling paddock, the bettors' windows, and the grandstand, going through a constant loop. The smell of cigar smoke drifts through the air, and it makes me want to heave. I twist around when the smell gets stronger, wishing for a moment that whoever it is that has the damnable object would stub it out or go somewhere else. This is impossible when I see that it's perched in Beck's fingers. He saunters up to me, an entourage at his back, and I almost have to blink and keep my mouth from dropping open. He's wearing this three-piece suit that makes him look like he stepped out of some black and white movie, and my mouth goes instantly dry. All I can think of is it's not fair. It's not fair that I'm having this reaction to this boy in that suit, and he looked at me like I could very well be wearing my normal jeans and t-shirt when I'm wearing this dress that flutters around my knees. I look damn good. It would be nice to get a reaction for once. What are you doing? I asked, grinding my teeth together to keep my mouth closed as I lean away from him. Here to see the horse, he says, putting the cigar between his lips. He's not really inhaling it, but it reeks, and I can't begin to understand what he thinks the positives about this are. So I pluck it from his mouth and hold it between us. You can't take this into the grandstand, so I'll get rid of it. Now? Are you always this much of a killjoy, or has it been more recent development? It smells horrible, I say, holding the cigar back out to him. It's opening day, he says, taking the stinky thing from me and putting it back in his mouth. He grins around the damp end of the cigar and saunters off. I watch him as he shifts into a crowd, his hands in his pockets and pale smoke drifting over his head. I wrinkle my nose, deciding to not focus on the stretch of space between his shoulder blades and that ridiculous suit, and more on the smell. That's probably a much safer choice for me. So now I'm going to smell like cigar smoke, which has got to be the first downward development of the day. Right after the revelation that Beck in the suit is suddenly sexy instead of vaguely irritating, everything had been going swimmingly so far. The horses shipped the few miles to the track without even the slightest hitch. They all settled into their temporary stalls for the day, and even more amazing, we won the opening race. All was going great until Beck showed up with his cigar and an entourage. I give the 2 guys and 3 girls a quick once-over, at least somewhat satisfied that none of them are smoking, when one of the tall, willowy girls with super shiny blonde hair turns to look at me, smiling as Beck says something and takes a cigar out of his mouth. I let my gaze slide by. I don't recognize any of them, because over the years I've gotten to know absolutely none of Beck's high school and society friends. They're the upper crust type, and while I appreciate that slice of demographics, it doesn't mean I'm all too comfortable with them. Here is where Bree would be rolling her eyes. I wish I had pockets in this dress, or at least had thought to bring a purse to keep my cell phone. I need to text her about visiting the Traverse Stakes because Bree always comes up to Saratoga for at least one weekend. Whichever one has the best of our horses running in the biggest race. This year, I'm betting it will be Star. I am too happy when Dad shoves Bronzy's lead rope in my hands. Take her around, Jules. I blink at him but shrug and lead Bronzy out of the open air stall. She follows me patiently, letting me guide her down the walkway. Gus hangs back behind me. Sometimes Dad likes to have me take the horses around the paddock because a girl in a pretty dress is better to look at than Gus. Or so the theory goes. I'm sure most of the women in the crowd would prefer Gus and his tattoos. How are the stitches? I ask him, and Gus lifts a hand up to his temple, drawing a fingertip over the black knots that dot up the wound. They itch, he says, and I smile. When do they have to come out again? He frowns at me. Don't be like that. Izzy will drag you back there if you're not careful. I can take care of myself, he sighs like he's long suffering between Izzy and Liner. He probably is, but his life isn't much more different than anyone else's in the barn. Promise? Sure, I promise. You're a slave driver, Julie. He narrows his eyes at me, but it's all for show. Because then he smiles, all even white teeth. Gus puts a hand between my shoulder blades and pushes, and I skip forward to aid another playful shove. The filly lifts her head and snorts, taking a few trotting steps with me. We pass by Beck and his friends, and I can't help letting myself take a few quick glances in their direction. I notice that Beck has gotten rid of the cigar. I walk by, hiding my smile against Bronzy's mane. Bronzy doesn't win. In fact, she's got a lot of improvement to do. But her failure to finish well doesn't put a damper on anyone's enthusiasm over opening day. Beck gives me a wink when he walks by with his friends, his skinny blonde girl doing an admirable job as arm candy. Thankfully, Beck doesn't notice the hot blush rising up in my skin, too busy saying something to the girl as she pushes iron locks of nearly white hair behind her ear. Sparkling stones dangle from her earlobes, and whatever she's looking at is hidden behind oversized sunglasses. I turn quickly to Bronzy and let Beck's flighty attention slip out of my mind. When Bronzy is cooled off and bathed, we bypass her temporary stall and load her right into the van. I help with the rest of the horses, leading them up the metal ramp and into the dark confines within, securing them and hopping back down to the gravel. This will be a daily event in my life for the rest of the summer, so it's best to work quickly and get out. We all want to get home, which is still unusually quiet when we arrive. The rumors so far are true. Delaney hasn't shown up yet, and he always shows up for opening day. Instead, it's Beck and whomever he brought with him, which gives all of us a vibe I dislike. It feels empty, wrong, and disturbing, like we're all uninvited house guests playing the owner's things while they're not at home. Maybe I'm overreacting. If Beck looks like there's nothing to be bothered by, maybe I should see that as a good sign. Maybe I should ask him if it bothers me so much. I really don't like that idea because it cements the wrongness of this whole summer. Or because it involves asking Beck about something serious. I'd never get a meaningful response out of him anyway. When we get everything put back in its place at Blackbridge, the whole place seems to shut down. After evening feedings, I find my cell phone, happy to discover that there's a text from Bree waiting for me. Travers it is. I shoot back a quick text to confirm as I stroll into the office to put down my stuff, finding Dad staring off into space. He's balancing the cell phone on its side on the desk, but his eyes are watching the windows. A lick of anxiety runs down my spine with memories of just after Mom left. I found Dad staring off into space. A lot back then, like he didn't know what to do with her gone. I stop in the doorway and he still doesn't register me. Dad? That does it, and I'm thankful for that because when he's really off in La La Land, he'll go minutes without acknowledging he's been asked a question and is expected to respond. This time he looks at me and tips the phone over until it clatters to a rest. What's going on? He smiles, which for a man who's been staring out the window at nothing is not really what I would call reassuring. It's more of a, and I notice you're here where I'd rather you not be sort of smile. What's wrong? Nothing. He looks at his phone again and picks it back up. If you don't mind, sweetie, I'm going to call Belmont and get an update on Star. We're shipping out from Monmouth tomorrow. I know that. He has his way of repeating information like I haven't known it about it for days or weeks. Like the time he sat Martina and me down to tell us that Mom was staying in California. We both had known well in advance. It was obvious. He intended to do it when there was a situation he didn't know how to handle and efforts to sweep it away. Downplay and then explain only after the situation and consequences are already common knowledge. It's also a nervous habit. Say something that's obvious when you don't want to say the truth. Girls, your mother decided to stay with California Tracks for the time being. Instead of girls, your mother isn't going to come home. Sometimes I'd appreciate the truth. I watch him speed down the Belmont barn and find myself saying, I think I'll take Keely out. He nods, barely heard me. I put my bag and cell phone up in the loft and then thump back down the stairs, actually pissed. Daddy should be asking me why I'm not taking out Maggie or Diver. He should be telling me, no, I will not be taking a 3-year-old filly on a strict training schedule out by myself without a plan. All of this says there's a change coming and it's probably going to stink. I groom and tack Kelly in her stall, then take her outside to mount up and go. After I canter her over the gently rising hills, I ask her to halt. The filly does it, shifting her hindquarters out in confusion. I think about what I should do with the filly that we haven't done, coming up with a blank. I feel like I've galloped Callie over kingdom come, and nothing good has come from it. After a minute of standing in the incredible heat of the day, I sigh and mutter to the filly, the heck with this girl. I reach down and tug at the stirrup leathers until they drop several holes. I check to make sure the stirrups are even, and then turn her around, trotting over the even expanse of grass between the hills. If Dad saw this, he wouldn't like it, but it can't hurt, and Callie's probably the only horse in the barn that will let me get away with this other than Diver. I've ridden her nearly every morning for 2 years, after all, and I know what she's capable of. The space I have to work with isn't exactly ideal, but it works well enough to turn a 20-meter circle and still have relatively flat ground to ride over. The filly perks her ears at this new development, turning the circle, while I nudge her to the outside, widening and widening until I ask her to do the opposite. It takes her a second to catch on, but she's a smart animal and figures it out, shrinking the circle until I spiral her back out again and break the circle entirely. I ask her to canter, but she picks up the wrong lead. I ask her again, and she gets it right. Before we turn, looping at the end of the narrow space to double back, she snorts and lowers her head, carrying it by herself, instead of using my pressure on the reins to build her own momentum. We go around and around, working our way back to the 20-meter circle, expanding and shrinking, while she rounds almost spontaneously underneath me. My fingers twitch on the reins, and she bobs her head down, plays the bit on her tongue, and keeps shifting out as I ask. Then finally, I break her off the circle and ask her to go. She explodes, gathers herself, and plows across the valley with enough momentum to send her right up the next hill and over, then right back down into the next valley before we nearly careen right into another house. Callie shies so violently I can't even remember staying with her. I just hold on and sit the horse. And I'm glad she makes the right decisions because she slips around a very familiar chestnut with a very enraging blonde mane and tail. When Callie comes to a shuddering halt, her chest rising and falling, I whip around and I can't help yelling back on Lighter. What are you doing? I may be screeching, actually. Lighter almost looks gleeful, like this is drama he can work with. Beck, to his credit, looks surprised, but I'm past caring because he's out here where he's not supposed to be on a horse he's not supposed to be on. And frankly, I am so done with it. What do you mean, what am I doing? Beck asked, recovering the shifting right into exasperation with me. You're the one that came down the rise like you had a demon chasing you, because I thought no one else was out here. Well, newsflash, Jules, here I am, he says, and that makes me sit back on the saddle. Beck doesn't even bother looking smug about shutting me up because it's very plain he's just angry. And Dad said you could ride Lighter? I asked dubiously. Julie, I own Lighter. That doesn't answer my question. He pauses, and I tilt my head at him, knowing the answer. Okay, so he didn't say anything about Lighter, but that's really beside the point. My dissatisfaction with his answer is obvious. No, it isn't, I say. Lighter is lighter. And you're out here by yourself, and you're not even wearing a helmet, Beck. You're asking me, you're asking to get dumped on your head with that cold. Beck smiles, but it's not like any other smile he's never given me. This time it's hard. It makes something inside me go very cold. Well, Julie, he says, turning lighter around and looking at me over his shoulder, maybe no one asked you. A short, disbelieving laugh slips out of my mouth. Not hours ago, we were a totally different situation. Sure, I was nagging him and he was rolling his eyes, but he was still Beck then. This is not Beck. This is some jerk who's taken his place in his horse and appears to have a death wish. I must tense because Kelly begins to fidget, sliding around to avoid the pressure of my legs. It's a physical effort to lift them off her sides and relax. The filly quiets. Why are you acting like this? I asked. You know the rules. He shakes his head. There aren't any rules right now, Jules. I have no idea what that means, especially since it's not really Beck's job to be cryptic. He's Beckett Delaney, the smart boy, the second son, the one who's been embracing life and hasn't thought about asking questions. If he'd said he didn't quite care about the rules, it would be normal. This isn't. This is trying my patience. What does that even mean? I asked. Because there are always rules. I've been following them for years, and so has he. Nothing, he says, shaking his head. I realize he's done with talking to me, which is so unlike him. It makes me want to ride Callie over to him so I can punch him and shake him out of it. Because this isn't normal. Instead, with everything else so strangely off, I get angry all over again. Fine, I say, clipped and finished. If you want to risk your life, that's your business. I tap my legs against Callie's sides and she strides off into an energetic trot, bringing past Lighter and Beck, who watch me pass. It's an effort, I can tell, for him to keep Lighter glued to his spot. But he does it impressively. As I pass him, I yell back, just try not to risk anyone else while you're at it. Callie shifts into a canter by herself, and I don't care. I ride it until I'm far out of sight. That ends chapter 8. Wow. Things are getting heated up. I sure hope Beck's going to be okay. I don't know what's happening here. Well, I'll meet you back here tomorrow night. Be safe, be kind, and get a good night's sleep. I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 9. Stay the distance.